Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to Strangers No Longer meeting tonight. We've entitled it The Election Season, A Call to Action. We welcome you. We have an agenda tonight that you're going to find, we probably mentioned it, and I'd like to lead you through how it's going to go. First of all, we're going to talk about resources, tools that will help you inform yourself so that you can form your conscience intelligently when you make your voting decisions. And Sister Karen Donahue will help with that. Next, we're going to move on to an area called advocacy, where we really show support. And Bridget Theodorov is going to take us through that section where we focus on Michigan driver's licenses for immigrants who are working here in the state of Michigan. And we're going to hear from Paul Stankiewicz, who represents the Michigan Catholic Conference. Then we're going to take you to deal with Bill O'Brien in our Circles of Action, where we talk about meeting our state rep or candidate for that office. And Bill is going to lead you through a power analysis and what we call the conversation. So with that, thank you very much for that, Rich. And now I would like to introduce you to Sister Karen Donahue. She's going to be talking with us tonight on how to prepare your conscience, as I said, how to consider all of the issues that you really need to be thinking about before you vote. Things like racial equality, pro-life issues, immigration policies, anti-abortion, climate change, and many more. Sister Karen Donahue is a Sister of Mercy, and she's been active with social justice for 20 years. As a matter of fact, she's one of the 7 full-time staffers in the National Social Justice Team for the Mercy Sisters. And she happens to be a founding member of our organization, Strangers No Longer. So she's going to introduce you to some tools and resources that you can use that will help you this voting season. So, Sister Karen, do you want to take it away?
Okay. Can everybody hear me? Can I share my screen, Rich?
Oh. We hear
yes.
You.
Yes.
Go ahead and share it, Karen.
Okay. There, share. Okay, thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm delighted to be here. I just one little correction, Kay, in your introduction. I've been active on justice issues for closer to more than 50 years rather than 20. So it goes way back. So I'd like to just share a little bit with you tonight, really more, almost more why we should be part of this and how our work preparing for the elections is really central and integral to our faith life. The church has really spoken very powerfully on the issues of the day, going back in relatively modern times to probably to 1891, where we had the first great social encyclical, Rerum Novarum. Some of the folks on the call tonight are old enough to remember learning about that in school. So Pope Leo really addressed the situation of the working classes during this early part of the Industrial Revolution. So every so often since that time, the popes have issued documents, very significant documents, one of which, coming up to the early 1960s, was Pope John the 23rd, who issued a famous encyclical, well, 2 actually, Mater and Magistra and Pacem in Terris. And Pope John addressed what were the crucial issues of that time, which were the whole issue of nuclear weapons, colonialism. This was the time when the colonial world was beginning to break down. And then he also talked, surprisingly, about the role of women. We haven't heard too much about that since. So other popes, Paul VI, of course, has issued many encyclicals. Pope John Paul II, his famous encyclical on labor, the situations of workers. And then coming up, even in just with the last 5 years, Pope Francis's Laudato Si, where he addresses climate change, which of course is a key issue today. So I'd just like to, let's see, I gotta get to here. Okay, let's see here. Okay, I've got two quotes here. The first one is, as you see, is from Pachman Terrace and 1963. And Pope John the 23rd reminds us that it's really in keeping with our dignity as human beings that we should take an active part in government. So, I mean, this isn't something, you know, that we can sort of take or leave. He really makes it quite clear that this is something that's required of us, rooted in our human dignity. And then more recently, in the second quote, as you can see, and this is from the bishop's statement, forming consciousness, I can't say it, for faithful citizenship from 2007. He says, participation in political life is a moral obligation. So, and that this moral obligation is rooted in our baptismal commitment. And I don't think this is something a lot of us have maybe heard in our parishes, but I think it's very important. This is coming from the hierarchy. It's coming from the papacy, that this is our responsibility as baptized people and as followers of Jesus. I'm having a little trouble moving my slides here. Okay. The first, we're going to look at several resources. The first one I want to mention is Forming Consciences for Faithful Citizenship. And this is a document that the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops releases every 4 years. It usually comes out in the year before the election. So in November, this past November 2019, at the bishops' meeting, they affirmed that they would reissue the one that had been written for the previous election in 2015, and that it was still relevant. So, and it's, I think, Kay, I think, mentioned earlier that this document really provides a moral framework through which we evaluate candidates' positions. So, as you know, there are many issues. You know, we could have a laundry list a mile long of the various issues, and how do we look? What is our framework for looking at these issues? What are the underlying values? And then how do we evaluate a specific candidate? And I think one of the things that makes this particularly difficult for us is that no candidate, at least in our political world at the present time, no candidate really embodies the fullness of Catholic teachings. You know, we find that, you know, some candidates or some parties may be very strong on certain issues, on other candidates may be strong on other issues. So it's very, this is why this is such a struggle, I think, for us as Catholics, that we have to really look at these issues very carefully, and then come to our own decision based on how we see, you know, the information that we take in. So as I said, this document really stresses, you know, the formation. How do we form our consciences so that we can make a decision relative to the candidates that we select? So this issue, we're going to send a resource out tomorrow that will give you links to all of these documents that I'm referring to. So you'll be able to check them out for yourselves. Okey-doke, a little trouble seeing here. Okay, another group that some people on the call I'm sure are familiar with, others this may be a new group for you. This is a group called Network, and it's a lobby for Catholic social justice. This group next year will celebrate its 50th anniversary, and it was formed in 1970 by a group of 47 Catholic sisters. So it was very much rooted in the vision and spirituality of Vatican II. So Vatican II ended in 1965. So this is, 5-6 years after the documents of Vatican II. So what Network does is it works to shape public policy as it impacts people who are poor and marginalized. So many of our communities, Catholic women's communities, have been working with people who are poor, people who are marginated and so forth, probably from our very beginnings. Many of our communities were founded specifically to minister to people who were poor. So, but most of that work was direct service, providing, education, healthcare, housing, whatever it may be. But some of the insights of Vatican II, and we'll look at some of those in a minute, people began to say, we need to impact public policy. It's good that we provide education, it's good that we provide healthcare, but we need to address the situations and circumstances that impoverish people and so forth. So, so that was the notion that this organization would form. They'd set up an office in Washington, D.C., and they would work directly with Congress to change public policy. So you may have heard, some of you may have participated. In fact, the last couple of years, they've had what they call Nuns on the Bus. They have a bus that has traveled all over the country, meeting with people and talking about the election. This year it's going to be virtual, so it'll be interesting to see how that works out. Now, I just want to look now at two statements from documents that really had a very profound effect on the formation of Network and our work in the public policy issue. And the first was a document that came, though this is Vatican I, Vatican II, sorry, I jumped ahead of myself. Okay, the Pastoral Constitution on the Church in the Modern World is one of the key documents of Vatican II. And the quote that you see on the slide is actually the very first sentence of that document. And it says, the joys and hopes, the griefs and anxieties of the men and women of this age, especially those who are poor or in any way afflicted, these are the joys, the hopes, griefs, and anxieties of the followers of Christ. So I think this places the church, right smack in the middle of the sufferings and anxieties of the people of the world. So this was a very powerful call to respond to those needs. And then the next one I want to look at is, here we go. Yeah, a few years later in 1971, this was, I think, the first synod. We've heard of the synods of bishops that have been held over the years. The one on the Amazon just a couple of years ago. There was one on the family. There's been, a whole string of them, since Vatican II. And this one in 1971 was the very first. And they issued a document called Justice in the World. And it's, as I said, this is just a little quote from it. Of course, it's a much longer work. But this particular quote was very significant for us. As you can see, action on behalf of justice and participation in the transformation of the world fully appear to us as a constitutive dimension of the preaching of the gospel. So I think this statement, I think, expresses so clearly that action for justice, work for systemic change, however you care to think it, is a constitutive dimension of the gospel. It's not some add-on or something that we do and everything else is over. So I think it's very, very, this was, as I said, a very powerful quote, or the whole statement was, it's worth reading in its entirety, but that this work is part of our faith life. A network does very extensive work in preparation for the elections. So I'm just going to go through just very quickly some of the resources that are available for our current 2020 election. So in the materials that you'll receive tomorrow, there's a link to Network's election resources. And I just had, there's a whole, as you see, there's a number of them. There's, for example, there's the 2020 election toolkit, and then listed under that are all of the documents that you see. The two in yellow I highlighted because I think they're probably the ones that are most significant. So the first one is, you see, 2020 Mend the Gaps policy platform. Network has been very concerned, probably the last 15, 20 years, on the tremendous income and wealth gap that we've experienced in our country. The fact that people, wages for a significant segment of people have stagnated or even dropped. And this, of course, has resulted in all kinds of other, problems for individuals and families. So Network has addressed a lot of issues around that wealth gap, like minimum wage, tax policy, and things like that. So that's the first document, which is very, very worthwhile. And then the second one is equally sacred. I think this is a very short document. It's only about 3 pages. And I think what this one does is, I think it frames the pro-life issue in a much larger context, so that we can see, there are many, many dimensions to the pro-life. So it's a good summary of them and shows where the candidates stand on these various issues. There are probably about 25 or 30 issues. They're categorized, so it's pretty easy to go through. The other documents, if you want to look at them, that's fine. But I say those two at the top are most important. Then they have under additional resources. They have the one I highlighted is Becoming Spirit-Filled Voters, and this is really kind of a packet of a variety of resources. There's really material that you could probably use for a discussion group, in your parish or another group. There are short readings, there are questions for discussions, there are prayers. It's a very good resource. You could kind of pick and choose what you like to use out of that, but it's just something available that you might find helpful. Let's see how am I doing on time. Okay, another resource that I'd like to call, Grace Keene, you're on this call. I saw your picture. Grace was part of this too. This came out of a group of, we call ourselves we're the justice promoters for the women's communities in the LCWR. That's the Leadership Conference of Women Religious, Region 7. The leadership, LCWR, is the umbrella group for all of the leadership people in the women's religious communities in the United States. And they're in regions, groupings of states. And we're in Region 7, which is Indiana and Michigan. So we put together a resource that I think you might find quite helpful. And there's a link to this in your packet too. And what we tried to show is how immigration, racism, and climate change are interconnected. It's how racism impacts immigration, how climate change impacts immigration, and vice versa. So and it's done. There's each section has some basic principles, and then there's a story that sort of exemplifies the issue, and then there are some quotes from Catholic social teaching, and then there are some questions at the end, questions that really we hope will help people evaluate candidates, asking about their position on various things. So I think it's about 7 or 8 pages, but it's very, very readable. So it's something I would highly, highly recommend. So I think we're almost at the bottom. Okay. Okay, I'd like to close with this, this quote. This was another Pope Francis quote. We have a lot of good Pope Francis quotes tonight, I think. So this one came, as you probably know, Pope Francis lives at a sort of a hostel, like hotel type place in Vatican City rather than in the papal whatever. And he says mass every morning in the chapel it's the St. Martha, Casa Santa Marta place. And this quote was from his homily on it, well, almost shortly, just about 6 months after he was elected. And as you see, he says that we need to participate for the common good. He says, sometimes we hear a good Catholic is not interested in politics. And I think we've all heard that in some way, shape, or form in various places. And he says, this is not true. Good Catholics immerse themselves in politics by offering the best of themselves so that the leader can govern. So in a sense, we have to offer the best of ourselves so that our leaders can govern. So I'd just like to make a little distinction between politics and partisanship, because I think we sometimes use those two terms interchangeably. And I know that the Poor People's March, I don't, any of you have been aware or involved in any of the activities of the Poor People's Campaign over the year. They had a number of activities a year ago, summer of 2019, to call attention to the plight of people who are poor. But one of their slogans is that we are political, but we're not partisan. So I think the fact that we are human beings, social beings, who live with other human beings, politics is how do we manage our joint life, and we have to find some way to do that, and that's really what politics is sort of about. Where partisanship is more party candidate, getting behind a particular person, maybe more because of the person. It could be, of course, what the person stands for, but and sometimes it's a little different. It's a little difficult to, I think, differentiate completely between those two ideas. I think particularly because in the current polarization of our political reality, that because candidates or parties are so identified with one position or another, it's hard sometimes to separate, what's political and what's partisan. But I think we always go back to the common good. What's going to foster the common good?
Thank you, Karen. Whoops.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. I think she's provided us with a number of resources. And so I would like to highly recommend the toolkit, because there are a couple documents in there that are really good. And as Karen said, one of the short ones that's very, very powerful is the Equally Sacred Scorecard. So anyway, thank you very much, Karen. And I'd like to move on now to Bridget Theodorov. And Bridget is a chaplain at Beaumont Hospital, for those of you who are not familiar with her from our other sessions. She is also the leader of our advocacy efforts. She brings experience there as well as spiritual insight. So Bridget, would you your presentation for us?
Sure. Thank you, Kay. Quiz Rich Switcher. Oh, he's okay. So just a little few words about being an advocate. We first hear that God advocates for us. In the Gospel of John, Jesus promised to send an advocate, the Holy Spirit, to be a supporter for us, a champion for us. And so when we decide to go and enter into advocacy for others, we are doing it for, to bring forth God's will for society. It's not our own opinion. It's not, like Sister Karen said, a partisan thing. We are champions for other and enter into talking with our elected representatives to arrange public policy to serve all God's people. And so as an advocate, It is, like Sister Karen said, our duty really that stems from our baptismal call to engage with society, and so that we bring forth public policy that benefits all people. And it's, if you remember last month, those of you who were on the call last month, we heard from Father Dave all about Catholic social teaching. Advocacy is a natural extension of that. So we learn about it, we learn what our core principles are, and then we go out into society and try to bring those principles to our communities around us. Next slide, please. Those of you from parish circles might remember that we brought forth this Michigan driver's license campaign last winter. This is the one issue that later on when we talk about arranging a Zoom call with your elected representatives or those who are running for office in our state legislature, this is an issue you will be talking about. And so we're just going to do a really quick refresher, and don't worry, this is going to be in your packet too. So next slide. Last time we asked you to meet with representatives in coffee hours, or we asked for the representatives to come to your church and talk about these Senate bills. What was happening, and it still happened, I believe, is these bills are stalled in both our Michigan Senate and our Michigan House of Representatives. So they're not out of committee. Last winter, we were asking you to ask your representatives to bring them out of committee. When you meet with those who are running for office this time, we're going to just have you present this issue and then tell them that if they are elected, they will be hearing from you again regarding these bills. These bills are called the Drive Safe Plan. Next slide, please. So before 2008, it was a little bit easier to get a driver's license and have your driver's license renewed in the state of Michigan. If you remember, and you've been on any of our other calls about all the different legalities of all the different documentation that immigrants have to get and go through and sometimes hold, it's a long road to full citizenship. So, we're not even talking about even people without documents. There are a lot of people driving and who are immigrants who have certain documentation, whether it's a work visa or other things, it's very difficult to obtain a driver's license. So what happens is they don't renew it, or sometimes they don't get a driver's license. And so we want to advocate for them to be able to drive safely and get a driver's license through the state of Michigan without full citizenship. So the next slide, please. If you remember from our Catholic social teaching, the core principle, the core value was that issue of human dignity. It is innate, it is intrinsic, it is inviolable. Every single human being is made in the image of God. And so every time we advocate for any public policy, that is the first and foremost core thing we remember. So this is an issue of human dignity as well. To be able to drive, to be able to go to work and take families to doctor's appointments, all those sort of things that we all have to do in our communities. Next slide, please. Again, another pro-life issue, if you will. This will improve public safety. If we have licensed drivers, there's going to be much more safe driving. There's going to be more insurance that is obtained by people with driver's license. So all these, the driver's license training and stuff like that. So it improves our safety in our community as well, to keep our neighbors from getting into accidents and life-threatening problems. Next issue, or next slide, please. And of course, there's some other economic benefits to these things too. In Michigan, where I live near Romeo, and we have tons of orchards and greenhouses that I personally benefit greatly from the agricultural benefit that our migrant workers bring to our area. And so it just makes our communities better. And again, an issue of common good goes into play there. Our other core principle was that it's not just the majority, what's ever good for the majority of people. It's so that everyone, all humans, can go to work and have a good life, have that full, rich, abundant life that Jesus calls them to. The next slide, please. And again, there's safety issues for the whole community. It strengthens relationships, really, if we're able to have people drive and be part of the community without fear. And so it really solidifies our brother and sisterhood. And we, again, one of those principles are solidarity, right? There's all that brings us together, and that we can form our communities on good, solid relationships with each other. Next slide, please. And of course, there's economic benefits, which benefit us all. So all these things are points you can bring up to your senators and representatives that are running for office. And again, you don't have to worry about taking this all down. This is going to be sent to you, including much more about these issues in a slide packet that includes frequently asked questions and all sorts of things. So you're going to be fully prepared before you go to these Zoom meetings, so you don't have to worry about remembering all this yourself. Now I would like to welcome Mr. Paul Stankiewicz, who is a policy advocate for the Michigan Catholic Conference. We're so happy to have him with us here today. And Paul, I was wondering if you could kind of tell us briefly about the Michigan Catholic Conference, for those of us who don't know what you do there in Lansing, and also maybe you could talk a little bit more about these Drive Safe bills.
Sure. Thanks, Bridget. It's good to be with all of you tonight. I'm a native Royal Oaker, so I'm from the Archdiocese of Detroit, my home diocese, so I feel right at home here. Bridget and I have exchanged phone calls and emails on numerous issues over the years, so she does a great job for all of you, and Mr. O'Brien and I have known each other. Bill, I just figured out it's 18 years now since you and I first crossed paths a long time ago, so it's good to be with all of you. And so the Michigan Catholic Conference is the, as it says, the official public policy voice of the church here in Michigan. The Archbishop of Detroit is always the chairman of the board, so Archbishop Vigneron is the head of the ship here, along with his diocesan brother bishops throughout Michigan. MCC was founded in 1963. Again, another harken back to Vatican II. Cardinal Dearden was very visionary in the nation in terms of starting up a state Catholic conference to speak to political issues at the state level. So we primarily focus on issues in Lansing. On occasion, a lot during COVID, actually, we will provide assistance to the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops in terms of local advocacy matters. So I primarily focus on education policy at the conference, but my screen just moved. Hope you can still see me. But I also am the point person on immigration and refugee issues, such as my expertise is, which is very limited. But I wish I had some good news on this driver's license issue. This is the second legislative session that this has been in play. Immigration is, as you all know, a very emotional, touchy subject, for lack of a better term. It's only made worse when it's an election year, and then it's made further worse during a pandemic. So the legislature's attention from the minute these were introduced last fall, and we were at the press conference to support them publicly, as we always have. They are really, really, really now on the back burner because of the state budget, which has to be adopted by October 1st, all the COVID relief that the state government is wrangling over and how to spend the money that they've received from Washington, D.C. And then yet again, I mentioned the election that's coming up. So it would be great for all of you as you talk to your legislators to simply remind them that this issue is out there. And I always tell people that I am so honored to go into a room and say, I represent 7 Catholic bishops, and I truly am blessed to do that. But when they hear from 7 real people back in the district who vote, I don't vote in all the districts outside of my own, that has a great impact. And I know Bill's going to talk about that in a few moments, about the very, very important role that you all can play in terms of advocacy. This reminds me, we've worked on driver's license issues. I've been with the conference for 16 years, and it comes up every couple of years on a regular basis. I'm thinking back to 2008. Bridget, you just referenced that date. There was a bill at that time that was not going to allow permanent legal residents to have driver's license. It was going to be for citizens only. And so we made a number of contacts with legislators. I was all prepared to testify. I had this great testimony all ready to give, saying we've got seminarians and priests that would be at risk. At the last minute, it was made known that the Detroit Regional Chamber of Commerce was coming to testify, along with the Detroit Tigers and the Red Wings. You never saw things change so fast because, oh, this was going to impact hockey players not be able to drive in Michigan, and things change. So you never know what's going to make a difference with legislators. The Michigan Catholic Conference has an advocacy network of about just under 10,000 members. If you are not a member of that already, I would urge you to join that. That is yet another resource. And I didn't have Bridget or Sister Karen do a slide. So if you want to go to mycatholic.org, hope you can see that, mycatholic.org. There's all kinds of information on all kinds of issues that we're working on. There also is a faithful citizenship page with resources on the election. If you're familiar with the Focus publication that comes out a couple times a year, hopefully your parish distributes those. They are free of charge from MCC. We will have an issue out shortly on the issues, the candidates, and your vote. Again, we never tell anybody how to vote, but it's just yet another resource that will give you points to ponder and questions to ask candidates and those who are in office who are asking for your efforts to reelect them, points to reflect upon. So that's yet another resource.
Paul, we'll include that link in our packet too.
Okay, that would be great. That would be great. I guess the last thing I would say is, again, the importance of talking to legislators. I do this full time. I've been doing it virtually for 6 months now. I'm actually going to Lansing tomorrow for my very first time in 6 months to meet with a legislator regarding some jail reform, sentencing reform legislation we support. So it'll be good to be back in Lansing a little bit. But again, when they meet with real constituents, that has the greatest impact. And I know for a lot of people that seems to be an intimidating thing, which again, I think Bill will allay your fears here momentarily. I just remember the first time I went to a couple of state representative offices when I was just getting started in advocacy, and a parishioner friend of mine went with me, and she said, Paul, I'm going to let you do all the talking because I am petrified. I don't know how to deal with these people. And 20 minutes later, the meeting was over with before you could snap your fingers. And she said, that was so easy. They were so nice. It was like talking with somebody over the kitchen table. It's not quite that familiar, but for the most part, legislators are real people. They used to be a school teacher or a realtor or an attorney in your hometown, and now they happen to work in Lansing. They want to hear from people, and very often they don't. And I used to hear in the old days when people would write letters to legislators, and you can still do that. That has impact. But some legislators would weigh the mail. How many people are saying to vote yes? How many are saying to vote no? If it's not something that's like a driver's license for an undocumented person is something that maybe 0 out of 140 legislators are going to be familiar with. They're familiar with parking tickets and potholes and things of that nature. So this is not something that's really going to register with them. So they will ask their staff, are we getting phone calls? Who's saying what? And now they count emails or they count texts. And I've heard from a number of legislators that sometimes if 2 or 3 people from the home district say, this is important and you should vote yes, or this is important and you should vote no, they will vote that way based on what 2 or 3 people say. So if we're afraid to engage, we're missing out. And as Pope Francis says, a good Catholic does get involved. The translation I've seen is meddle. Do we meddle in politics? And yes, we are called to do that. So I would encourage all of you to do that. Don't be afraid, as Pope John Paul told us. I hear that quoted by Joe Biden now, but John Paul the Great says, do not be afraid. You know, the Lord will give you the words to say. And these are regular people that you're going to be talking to, and they want to hear from you. So I would very much encourage you to do that. Be an active, be a faithful Catholic.
Great. Paul, my name is Bill O'Brien. I'm my church is Jesu, and Paul, you look the same as you did 20 years ago. So
Everybody check is in the mail.
There, keep it coming. Paul was actually the director of the Catholic Rural Life organization before he joined the staff at Michigan Catholic Conference.
Thank you very much to Bridget and Paul. And now I would like to introduce you to Bill O'Brien for the heart of our presentation tonight. So we may take a few minutes longer, but you will find this really riveting. So Bill O'Brien really comes to us with a lot of community organizing experience and a passion for social justice. So he's going to be introducing us to what we call a power analysis and the conversation. So Bill, would you take us through it?
Sure, and I'm watching time here. It's so I'm planning to finish presentation here, but I'd also like people to know that if you want to stop, if you want to ask a question, you can put it in the chat box or somehow raise your hand. I cannot. I'm going to try to make sure I can see the whole gallery, but stop me. Feel free to stop. Before we start, before I start, we're starting to think about ways that we as a Catholic network, as a network of Catholics, can really help in a nonpartisan way over the next 6 weeks. One thing that some of us are starting to think about and would ask you to consider is we're thinking to help people apply for an absentee ballot. Okay, everybody got them in the mail, but there's a lot of people that when stuff comes in, it looks too official, they're afraid to do it. So we're thinking of connecting with parishes and churches, especially in areas that are low income, where people are kind of don't have familiarity with that kind of stuff. Anyway, if you'd like to help us, we think that's what we would like to do, is to have teams go out in like the 2x2, but teams go out to churches on a Sunday morning and with the pastor's help, actually get people to apply for an absentee ballot so they can do early voting. If you want to do that with us, we'd love to have it. Send me an email or send an email to strangersnolonger11@gmail.org. Let us know, because if we do this, we'd like to get moving over the next couple of weeks. It'll be a nonpartisan way to really contribute to the democracy. Back on the issue of driver's licenses and what we're asking, the purpose of this section here is we would like to get all our circles, if possible, to hold a 30 to 40 minute Zoom meeting with your state representative. Who? I don't even know who it is. Well, that's why we're doing this, in part, is to find out, so that you build a relationship between your circle, your parish, and yourself, and whoever that man or woman is that is your state representative. So that's where we're heading. And so now you say, well, I don't go to church. I don't have a parish. Well, what do I do? Well, we'd love for you to hook up with one of the parishes or one of the circles nearby you. Well, there's no circle nearby me. What do I do? Well, start your own circle. Get a few people together and talk to your state rep. Do I have to know everything about driver's licenses? Absolutely not. We'll talk about that in a minute. So that's where we're heading in the next 14 minutes or so. Rich? All right, so here's what we're talking about. Our circles of support we've gone through an education process over the summer. Hundreds of people are involved, but there comes a time to do action. So that's what we're talking about. When we say to somebody, oh, call your legislature, we say it's better, as community organizers say, before you go rushing in, do a power analysis. It'd be like, well, power analysis, that's one of those hokey words. No, power, when you call your electrician to come to your house to fix a problem, what does the electrician do? She does a power analysis. She looks at where's the problem, what's going on, where are the wires. So we're talking the same thing about getting involved in any kind of social change or legislative action. Do your power analysis before you get shocked. Okay, next. So why do we begin with a power analysis? Rather than just rushing up to Lansing or trying to make a bunch of phone calls or getting the students to connect. Here's why. Because why do we begin with power analysis? Because we're not at this level, we're not in a battle. We're not in a fight for the driver's licenses. This is not a battle. This is a conversation. Now you may say, some of the people in your circle say, oh, I'm afraid, I don't want to do that. I like doing the charity thing. Well, this is not a fight. This is a conversation with somebody who has power. They don't have food to give away. They do have some power. So people in the parish may actually enjoy the conversation. Like Paul said, the woman that said, I'm afraid. Well, then she said it was like sitting around a kitchen table. Secondly, this 30-minute or 40-minute Zoom conference call with your state rep is a chance to grow your circle. You say, well, I've only got 3 or 4 or 5 people in my circle. Well, I guarantee you that if you schedule a meeting with a state rep or eventually with the governor, if you set a meeting with a state rep, you will have people that will say, gee, I don't like to go to meetings, but I'd love to get to know the state rep. Now you can tell people that during the meeting, they'll have a chance to ask their questions. This is not a battle about driver's license. This is an excuse to get to know the state rep. Next slide. Any questions? Why do we begin with a fools rush in? Well, we don't want to be fools. We don't get to run up to Lansing or make a bunch of phone calls. We want to kind of get to know what is the terrain like before I start driving around. Secondly, the power analysis allows the circle members to build a little confidence. You don't have to know everything, but you have to have a little confidence that you could actually have a decent meeting with somebody in power. This is new terrain for a lot of people. You don't go alone. That's why we do a power analysis, is so that it's not you talking to the state rep, it's us talking to the state rep. That's why you invite new people to your meeting. This is not just for the little clique, not for the circle. This is for you to invite others to join you. And numbers do count. There's a pastor, Baptist pastor, he said politicians may not know how to read, but they sure can count. So the more the merrier. And the whole purpose of this is to build the relationship, to first of all, build the relationship with a state rep. It's you, your circle, your parish, getting to know somebody and having them get to know you. Okay, are we good so far? All right. Next, the other thing is just to find out what he or she is saying about the driver's license. They may say, I don't know anything about it. Oh, well, we know something about it. We'll send you our information. We've got documents from the Michigan Catholic Conference. Can we send you some documents so that you're aware not only about the issue, but you know that some people in your district care about this. And by the way, we're just the tip of the iceberg. Okay, next. A power analysis. Am I going too fast? Sister Martha, you all right? Okay, all right. This is not about knowledge. Power analysis is not just about knowledge. It is about building relationships. You can sit in a library, or you can go online, or you can have your students go online, and they can learn stuff about the legislature, but there's no substitute for getting to know somebody who can help you figure things out. So Maria Pangori with the students, Jim Dwyer, getting them face-to-face to meet with some people of power would be a good thing. How do you do that? Well, you actually find out who she is. What does she care about? Now, she knows you care about immigrants, but what does she care about? What does the state rep care about? What are her goals? Does she want to be governor someday? Where'd she come from? Where's her family go to church? All those questions. What would she do if she weren't state rep? What did she do before? Who is she connected? Does she know anybody in the parish? Have you met our pastor? All of that is the kind of stuff around the kitchen table that you're going to do in this Zoom meeting. Okay, next slide. All right, you don't have to be I already said this, don't have to be an expert on driver's licenses. You don't have to be an expert, frankly, on everything. You vote, or you're gonna vote, or you eventually will vote, or your friends vote, your mom votes. You belong to a community. And by the way, at this time of the year, more than other times of the year, maybe, I don't want to say for sure, but at this time of the year, these state reps do want to get to know you. Why? Why do they want to get to know you now? Because there's an election, okay? Next slide. So the goal of this half hour or 45 minutes is to get to know some of a power analysis. The goal of it is to get to know some of the players. Are they going to be friends? Are they going to be enemies? They might not be for driver's licenses for immigrants, but they might be for other things that you care about. Or maybe later they'll be for immigrants, but it's to find out, can they be and will they be friends and allies? It's also, you do a power analysis, you don't rush into something that's not winnable. Paul said something very important. The bad news of the immigration right now is on a way back burner. So part of the conversation that we want to have with a lot of state reps is to find out what's possible to win at this time. The state rep might say, you know, I'm glad you called me. This isn't going to be talked about until maybe next March. Possibly next March, we will know if it's a winning issue. But you've already started the relationship, so now you know the fight might happen in March. Next. There are special interests, as Paul said, the Red Wings and whoever else was up there, there are special interests who they like to work behind the scenes. They don't want everybody to know what it's like in a jungle. Actually, the title of power analysis sometimes is figuring out how to live, survive, and win in the jungle, where things aren't always what they appear to be. So there are places you'll find out that there are special interests that, you know, they don't want you to know they're operating. Okay, go ahead. And over time in power analysis, you find out there are people in other parts of the state who are very excited that Catholic parishes or people from parishes are actually going to talk to their state reps. What you are about to do with your church parish, there's not too many people doing that across the state. And frankly, there's immigrant groups, there's lawyer groups. They're very excited that you are about to launch into this. Okay, next. Okay, so what is it? It'll be a conversation with somebody in power, your state rep, or the candidate. It'll be by Zoom. It's good to do it 30 to 45 minutes max. It may look like an informal conversation, and it'll feel like an informal conversation, but really it's pretty well disciplined and it's controlled by the circle leader, and it's somewhat open-ended, but the circle controls it. All right, so we're asking, here's the big ask, we're asking each circle to organize a conversation with your state rep sometime before the November 3rd election. Why is this a good time? Because they want to talk, this is the time they want to talk to you. They want your vote. So anyway, they want to get to know you. Okay, next slide. So how do you get started? Well, you set up the meeting, you set up the Zoom meeting by calling the state representative's office. You got to find out who your state rep is. Then you actually call to set up the meeting. And then once you've got the meeting set, you set up the agenda. Next slide, Rich. All right, what are the first steps? Number one, don't call the state reps, don't call the staff person. I think they call it chief of staff or the scheduler for State Rep Garza. He's down in Lincoln Park. First, make sure that 2 or 3 of your circle are willing and able to do this and that they want to do it. And yes, Mary Coffee, if your representative is term limited, should you have a meeting? Yes, absolutely. If there's 2 people running, have have a meeting with each of them. They'll know that you're talking to the other guy or the other woman. So yes, term limits, go with the new people. So getting the appointment, you got to call his or her office. You schedule a date. The staff person, a good staff person for the state rep will say, what's this meeting about? And I think you be pretty frank and you say, well, this meeting is about some people from our parish would like to get to know the state rep. We do have an issue we'd like to talk to them about, and that is driver's licenses for immigrants. But we see this as getting to know our state rep. This is a time for us to get to know him and or for her to get to know us. And then the staff person will say, well, about how many people are going to be on there? Well, you can say our group right now is 6 people, but we're inviting others from the parish. So my guess would be that there will be somewhere between 10 and 20 people on the call. And I, the circle leader, I'll manage it so it'll be a well-run meeting. Somebody just mentioned that many state representatives, Paul said that many state reps who are term limited, they're done, they're finished, they end up being senators down the road. So it doesn't hurt to call the people that are term limited either, okay? Call somebody, get a meeting with your state rep or a candidate. Okay, is your pastor, are you gonna invite your pastor? Joe Mauer, are you going to invite your pastor to this Zoom meeting? Joe? Just nod your head, Joe. Yes, I'm going to invite my pastor. And if you don't, Kathleen Rogers will. Why is it important to invite the pastor? Anybody? You unmute yourself. Why is it important to invite the pastor? Anybody?
Because he represents all his parishioners.
That's right. Why else? Why else would you invite the pastor?
He's a voter.
He's a voter. Why else?
Get him involved with your circle.
Absolutely. Get him involved in the circle. Why else would you invite him?
Maybe if he's there, then other folks from your parish will come to the meeting.
Absolutely. Why else?
Because he'll be impressive to the representative who will say it's worth their time.
Sure.
Meet with him.
And there's one more reason, because he'll see your circle as caring not just about yourself and your issue, he'll see your circle cares about the whole parish. You're not just caring about immigrants, or you're not just caring about your own little group, you care about the parish. That's why you invite the pastor. All right, next slide. Next slide. Okay. These are some agenda items. It's actually a very simple meeting. It's actually, I'm trying to turn off my alarm here. Okay, the agenda is very simple, and I think rather than going through this, I think we'll just save this for the agenda and the meeting itself. You may not believe me. The meeting itself is actually the most enjoyable. It's the easiest, it's the most enjoyable. The circle leader will be in charge, and you just keep it to 30 or 40 minutes.
And Bill, we're gonna send with the packet tomorrow a pretty good 3-page document which you've laid out the whole meeting, how it's gonna go, a script, really a nice script for the folks to follow. So I think they'll find that very
All
useful.
right, good.
And even though it's scripted, this allows for some flexibility and people to ask the questions that they are interested in as well. So it's
Right.
very well done.
You want your neighbor to be able to ask about what are they going to do about the potholes, or how do you feel about the public education? What are you going to do about that? Or what are you going to do about jobs? Or how do you feel about abortion issue? There's no, you want your people on the phone and give them a chance to ask the question. Okay. Next slide. So we'll send you the agenda. We'll send you the draft agenda. It's very simple. It's very enjoyable. At the end of the thing, the state representative is going to thank you and please come to my office, and you're going to say, please come, you'd be welcome to come to church, or have your pastor invite him or her to come to church on Sunday. Join us for liturgy, and of course there's COVID, but whatever. All right, next slide. Okay, any questions? Because now I'm going to start taking names. Any questions about this or comments? I'm trying to just bark it out. Feel free to unmute yourself. But now we're at the point of, this is the point where you say, well, we're going to do it, or by golly, I'm going to give it my best. Any questions before I start calling for names? Now don't forget, Pastor Bill Kirschkar, the Lutheran pastor out there. You know, your church can do it. We'll help you. We'll sit on the call with you. We'll help you get ready. Anything you want, we're ready to help. So, any questions, Jim? Jim Dwyer, you okay?
Yeah, I got a question. If we're like doing it through Cristo Rey and not through a parish, would we invite the school leadership, or would we invite the religious orders to sponsor our school?
I would say yes, yes, and yes. You don't want to have, I would say, 20 people would be a good number. I think your students would love to have, be on equal footing with the principal. They might actually get a kick out of being on equal footing. We're all in this together. Okay, any other questions?
I don't have a question, but I want to say hi to William Kirschkar. We met about 2 years ago at one of the initial meetings, and I'm just delighted to see that you are still active with this group. So anyway.
All right, so
Hey, Bill, I have a question though. Some parishes may involve more than one district. So you're talking about, so you have to figure out which districts you're going to meet with, essentially.
Well, at least do one.
Okay.
At least we ask you just do one. Now you say, well, okay, we have the meeting. Then what do we do? We're all going to come together on November 14th, and we're going to report it out November 14th. So we'll find out what you all found out. We'll all be together. All right, so I'm going to start seeing if there's people that are ready to say our circle will do it, or I'll form my own circle. Okay, so far, why don't you start?
Great. I come from Christ Our Light in Troy. We're an amalgam of former other parishes. I found out we have people from 34 communities, and we have 3 large groups that represent 3 different voting districts. And it's a great surprise to me that I already have 2 people, one from the Birmingham Bloomfield area and one from the Troy area, who have each offered to work on a Zoom for their area. So I'm looking for someone also from the Royal Oak area, and we might be able to carry off 3. Go figure.
All right. Now that's pretty cool, right? What she just did is pretty cool. So it's ambitious, but she's already got 2 people that want to set this up. Now are they members of her circle? I don't know. They will be after this.
Yeah.
All right. I'd like Rich and Kathy, what are you going to do?
Well, we're going to help with Rosemary Inslee to set up some meetings for the Mother Perpetual Help out of Oak Park in Ferndale.
All right, let me ask Rosemary, do you want to, what are you committing to? What are you going to do?
So what we've focused on in the past, because we've got people that come from several different districts. Our church is something of a destination church, at least in Oak Park. So we focused on the reps that are in the territory that the churches reside. So I think we'll focus on Oak Park, but also look at people interested in doing the rep for Ferndale also.
Okay. All right, anybody else? Bridget, how about you, Bridget?
Yes, I will do that for Saints John and Paul Parish in Washington Township. Rich and Kathy also share some of our district, and I might be calling Sister Val for help too. We share some, I think, elected officials, so I'll put that together.
All righty. And we just got a note from Amy Kettner. Are you on the line, Amy? Why don't you go ahead and talk it out? Amy?
Hello, I'm here. Yes, I think that we are able to get our team together to do this and potentially collaborate with the St. Francis Circle here in Ann Arbor as well.
Okay. All right, anybody else? More the merrier,
Bill?
frankly.
Bill, I'll work with Tom to see if we can get this going in our Port Huron area.
Okay, Gary, why don't you introduce yourself so people...
Oh, I'm Gary Duquette from Holy Trinity Parish in Port Huron, Michigan, and recently elected as treasurer for Strangers No Longer.
Great, thanks, Gary. Okay, next, who's next?
Hi, Bill.
Go ahead.
Hello,
Go ahead.
Kathleen.
Yeah.
I'm in a little bit of a pickle, and there may be, I think Rich and Kathy is the same way. My parish is Jesu Parish in Detroit, but I live in Royal Oak. And so obviously I would like to have a relationship with my representative. So I was thinking maybe I could work with Kay to develop a delegation from Royal Oak to meet with Jim Ellison, who is our representative.
Right.
Kay and I both live in Royal Oak. So, and I think it might be a wonderful chance to recruit people that may not be affiliated with a church or, but friends of mine who are very, what shall I say, politically aware and politically concerned. So I'm just suggesting that as a possibility, and Kay and I are good friends, so we can talk about that.
So you'll invite some of these non-church people into your group.
Yes.
Yes.
Some people call that evangelization. Hey, what about, so Kathleen, also, why don't you also, I'll work with you to get some people in the Detroit state rep. Okay, so we'll do two.
Okay, that sounds
Royal
good.
Oak and Detroit.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Right. Anybody else?
Hi, Bill. My name is Emily. I'm a senior at Detroit Crystal High School. And I just wanted to say that this is like, this meeting today really inspired me. Really something that I'm going to try to get together in our circle of support. And it's going to take a lot of preparation, but I'm sure it's something we can do, especially as students where we have like a big voice that I think we're going to be able to accomplish.
I think we ought to give Emily, let's give her a round of applause, however you do that.
Emily.
Good for you. Good for you.
All right, so Crystal Ray, all right. Who's next? Okay. What about up there? What about up there in Rochester Hills? You guys got a very important district up in there. Grace?
Sister Grace.
Yes, I knew you were going to get around to me.
Well, you've got that beautiful landscape behind you. Come on.
So we're in. I don't know who's going to be in yet, but we will be.
Is that St. Mary's?
St. Mary's and St. Andrews Circle of Support.
You think you can get a meeting with your rep?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Hector's got his hand up somewhere.
Oh,
Hector.
yes, and Hector's my boyfriend, so that's why I do not look like a Hector, but I'm right here. Yeah, Hector doesn't want to appear on camera at the moment, but so anyway, what the two of us are planning on doing is following up with Patricia Ellison, the Christian Services Coordinator at St. Patrick's Parish in Brighton, to see if there's any sort of movement with the possibility of doing a circle, or see if getting to know our rep is something that our parish would be interested in doing. We are also involved with the young adult ministry in our county, And so we are going to talk with the young adult minister about the possibility of including some of the voter guides and stuff on our young adult ministries social media pages.
Great, great. Okay. Give everybody your name so they know who you are.
Oh, my name is Renee Thorwall, and my boyfriend is Hector Quiroz Torres.
Nice. Nice to see you, Renee,
Can you
again.
put that in the
Nice to
chat
see
so
you
we can
too.
get your name? Could you put
Put
that?
it in the
Yes,
chat.
of course.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Oh yeah, and I'll also connect with Amy Kettner to see what she and her circle in St. Francis is doing too.
Pastor Bill Kirschkar. Bill, go ahead and talk.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there are any circles in the Western Wayne County area that are committed to this.
There's the possibility of a new one out in Westland, but I think we're meeting with him in a couple of weeks. Get back to me, okay? Or let's
Okay.
talk about that offline. I'm kind of would you just take responsibility and then we'll figure out, I know there are people out there, it's just a question of maybe they would go in on what's the name of your church, Bill, out there?
Holy Trinity.
And you're the pastor of Holy Trinity Lutheran.
Correct.
Well, let's just try it. If we say Holy Trinity Lutheran's going to try it, then we'll get some other people to join you if and when you want to. Is that all right?
Bill, I'm from previously at St. John Newman in Canton, right next to Westland. And there's a lot of very good active people there. I've been proselytizing about Strangers No Longer, but no interest yet. But I'm sure I can get some names of people that would be interested.
So Gary Duquette and Bill Kirschkar, Pastor
Okay,
Kirschkar.
I guess I'm a little reluctant to put on it because I don't have total buy-in from the parish, and I just want to be a little careful about that. I was hoping maybe I could piggyback with another circle and get some grounding doing this, but we can talk more.
Well, Gary and I will talk offline and see what we can come. I know we can come up with something because they're just not hooked into parish out there yet. Now there's a movement, but I can't remember the name of the church, St. Simon and Jude or something like that out there.
Yes, Westland, yes. Father Jerry out there is very supportive of this type of activity.
All right, so we'll get back to you, Pastor Kirschkar.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? All right, so it's right now it's 8:16. I'm going to hand it back to right now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We have 10 circles of support have made a commitment. We trust others will be thinking about it and knowing that we can help. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to I think I'm handing it back to Kay Sofaro.
Thank you. And
don't
Rich,
forget one thing, Kay. Don't forget, if you want to help us create teams of twos to go to churches to help people apply for early voting, please send us an email, either to me or to strangersnolonger11@gmail.org. Thank you, Kay.
You're welcome. And actually, this is going to be Bridget. Bridget, are you there?
I am.
Would you take this, please?
Sure. Just to wrap up really quickly, you'll be getting a packet tomorrow with 3 different sections to it. One is your resources for the formation of conscience as you go into the season to vote. So you have all those resources, including some sample bulletin articles for your parishes, so that you can kind of educate the parish too as to some of these resources as they form their conscience for voting. You will also get that packet of Michigan Drive Safe information so that you'll be prepared for your Zoom meeting. And then you'll have another packet with all the Zoom meeting information to help you get ready for that. So again, you know, it could seem overwhelming right now too, but I am just really encouraging you to enter into this advocacy. I think that forming relationships with our elected officials locally is really important. I mean, yes, the presidency is very important to vote for, but really the communities where we live and work and raise our families, we need to build relationship there, not only for this one issue, but for an array of issues that our church it holds value, it holds moral goodness for. So we have to advocate for that moral goodness. I think that we can be good role models in Strangers No Longer in our parish circles of support by inviting the rest of the parish to, as they decide who to vote for, to look at all the issues. And so I think it's really good role modeling, because sometimes we hear some divisive language around, you know, what party is Catholic and what's not, or what candidate is Catholic and who's not. And like Sister Karen said, there is no one candidate nor one party that falls into the gospel, the whole of the gospel value perfectly. So I think Strangers No Longer and Circle Support is good role modeling, inviting everybody to be a part of this and to ask questions and to engage with their representatives. So we thank you tonight for spending this time with us and for having the being open to engage in this activism. And we will be praying for all of you as you schedule your Zoom meetings. Thank you very much.
Before we end, I'd like to do a shout out to the person who is here from the furthest away. And I think it's in Nicaragua, and his name is Father Joe Mulligan, a Jesuit working in. Joe, do a wave, a shout out, or something. There you are. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're.
Thanks, Bill. Can I just say something?
Cindy Penn?
I had on the. Oh, can I speak?
Yes.
Yes.
I had something on the tip of my tongue. I cannot organize a meeting, a Zoom meeting from down here, you know, Nicaragua. But if anybody organizes one and wants some input from here, I could say just very briefly why people are forced to migrate, you know, like especially Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala, because of the gangs that extort people. If they don't pay up, they can get killed in their neighborhood, as well as the usual problems of hunger and unemployment. So I could give a little input on that, but that's not exactly on the topic of why people should have driver's licenses. But if you want, you know, a voice, let's say from Central America, here I am.
You could be on.
Thank you.
You could be on one of the Zoom meetings.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
And I think it's Independence Day down there, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Felicidades.
Oh, gracias, yeah. Independence, right, from Spain.
Kay,
Okay.
back to you. Kay.
We just want to thank everybody for joining us this evening. This is just really thrilling to see so many people interested at this time and interested in exploring ways to become more informed and to become really active. This is what we say we need to be to really create the country we want to be part of and to really live out our faith. So I thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to meeting with you again. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you.
Thank you.